Hello and welcome once again to Conversations with Kendall. I'm Kendall Lutz, real estate agent here at Preferred Shore, and we are filming this podcast in beautiful downtown Sarasota at Preferred Shore Studio. What a beautiful place to be. Even on a cloudy day, Sarasota beats a sunny day in some other cities. So this is a beautiful day down here today. My guest today, I want to talk everything real estate today. So I brought on a star real estate agent, the beautiful Celine Charleson.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime. Let's talk about, we're going to get into the market. We're going to get into how you run your business. But let's talk about what got you to this point, first of all. Where you were born and raised, how you grew up, and how you landed here.
So I was born and raised in Western New York, Buffalo, right near the Canadian border. Lived there for 46 years. Have 2 teenage daughters, went through a divorce during the pandemic, and because of the way that New York was at the time, we decided we needed to have some more normalcy to our lives. I was teaching at the time. I have a background in health and wellness, and then a master's degree in education. So I spent 19 years in the public school system in New York, and ended up losing my job because of the mandates during the pandemic. Yes.
Wow.
And at that point, I was kind of on my way out. There were a lot of changes over the course of my career, and that I didn't really align with anymore.
Now, when you lost your job in New York, was that because you couldn't do online teaching, or they didn't?
So I was doing online teaching from the school while my children were sitting at home. I was asked to be a parent advocate for the children who were being forced to learn remote or were in school on a hybrid schedule. I had a group of English language learners where they thrive off of facial expressions, and we're all masked up and we're over a Zoom camera. Yeah. So it became increasingly more difficult to go into work every day and do my job and be satisfied. And
you never realized back then at the time what you're missing when you mask half the face. A lot of emotions.
Yes.
Your eyes can do so much, but your smile and
and that was the one. My smile is
everything.
That was my feature at school. And you're sitting across the room from somebody who you just flash a smile, and their whole demeanor changes. It's contagious.
Right. Yes.
So it became increasingly more difficult, and I was noticing a lot of things happening with my students. Work not being completed. Parents were trying to work at home while the kids were at home. It was just not an ideal situation. So I became more and more vocal on behalf of these parent advocacy groups, and that, along with the mandates, ended up costing me my career in New York.
So you moved down here, and this is why I wanted you on the show. This is a single mom, real estate agent, but you were not a real estate agent in New York.
I was not. Real estate was a hobby. I loved doing and watching shows, learning. I love learning. So we came down here, and I did try teaching for a year, figuring it was a great career to raise my children with. Why not go back to it? I was working as a health coach remotely for a company in Venice at the time. And once I got down here, I figured I needed that flexibility to be a parent. I had no family down here, no support except for one woman that actually used to babysit my girls. And she was the reason we ended up in Sarasota.
Because you knew her from?
Because I knew her. She had that relationship with my girls. We were originally looking in a different part of the state, and she kept saying, "Why don't you come down, look at Sarasota, look at Lakewood Ranch?" And 20 years ago, Sarasota was completely different than it is now.
Right.
So it was not like, I don't know, Sarasota, I have young kids, come down here. We did. We traveled down here several times during the pandemic, and as soon as I got down here, I'm like, oh my, this is amazing. Life was as normal as it could be.
Masks were off, fresh air, sunshine.
Restaurants were open, gyms were open. At the time, my county was still shut down in lockdown. So coming down here, and the weather, it was just so much nicer, in January and February than it was in upstate New York. And I like being outdoors. I need that sunshine. So we came down here, spent several months researching, and decided we were going to come down to Lakewood Ranch just to have one person for support if I ever needed it.
Wow. So you're a lot like me. I'll touch on that later, but I came down here with nobody. And, you talk about sphere of influence and so on. You're starting all over. Mm-hmm. But let's go back to New York now. So how do you think Governor Cuomo ran that We won't get too political here, but I hear now he's running for mayor.
He is running for mayor, and the grass wasn't greener once he left. We'll leave it at that.
Oh, he didn't get any better. Well, maybe he'll be better running a city than he will the whole state. We'll see. And who knows? That was a tough time for every mayor and every governor and to make those choices, but odd. Okay. So moving forward, you get down to Sarasota. You're trying to do some teaching, some health and wellness, and that didn't...
I had, during the course of the pandemic, before I lost my job, I went back. My undergrad was in health and wellness, but I obtained a health coaching certification. So I started my own health coaching business, trying to do that online, back to school. And public schools down here are different. We came down here for education. Just was very different from what I was used to after 19 years. And I found that I was working more hours. I was being paid much less, and I was struggling. My work day seemed to never end, and I am a single parent, and I needed to take care of my children when I came home. And I decided that no matter how hard I worked and how much I worked, I was never going to make an extra penny in education.
So you were health coaching at the schools?
I was health coaching remotely.
Remotely?
After work, after teaching all day.
Wow.
What truly resonated with me and made me make that change was when I went to get pre-qualified for a mortgage down here. And we weren't serious. We did rent for a period of time to get acclimated to the area, to figure out where we wanted to be. So wanted to get that pre-approval so I could start looking. And the woman who had done the refinance for me up in New York was licensed in Florida. So I had to run some numbers. And when she came back based on my teaching salary alone, regardless of how much money I had to put down from the sale of my house, I looked at the paper and I laughed. And she's like, "What's so funny?" I said, "I can't get anything for this.
I can get a garage."
And I told you, she's like, "Well, what about a condo?" I said, "Not with a roof."
Yeah.
And
That's right.
Yes, I was being a little facetious, but that
true.
really,
True.
It was true. It hit me that I'm not going to be able to provide for my children the way that I want to and the way that they deserve to be provided for on a teacher salary.
And that was 4 years ago? 5?
4 years ago.
So imagine if they run those numbers now. You'd be like, there's not even a 1-bedroom condo you could.
Right.
Yeah, that's terrible. And I have a chiropractor friend of mine, teachers as well. I have teachers that I'm really good friends with at Tatum Ridge Elementary School, and on their salaries, they're living an hour outside of Sarasota to afford something. And I talked about selling them a home here. Let me get you a home nearby. So your hour and a half drive in the morning and back, it's killing you, man, taking you away from your family. Well, they can qualify for homes here. So
my first semester, I was commuting to St. Pete because I was in a Title I school. So there was, a bonus incentive, a pay incentive to teach there. That drive didn't seem long on paper, but throw in traffic and everything. I mean, it added to the day. I was out the door before my kids even got up, and I came back in time to pick them up and then out the door for activities. So it wasn't a sustainable life at that point.
Yep. And you're the second woman I've had on the show that gave up a corporate job, somewhat of a corporate school job, whatever, but and decided I'm going to take the leap. And then this was not a single mom. She had a husband. So together they took this leap and started a fencing company and never looked back and said their whole life changed because they now are available for their kids and so on. So same thing with you. Obviously, you still have to do showings. You have, closings and so on. You have to be at. And but I'm sure you're around your kids. What percentage more time are you around them?
Just that, I look at this past weekend and I worked both Saturday and Sunday all day. So I feel like I did not see them. But the trade-off is I can now drive them to school if need be. I can pick them up. If I need to take them to the orthodontist in the middle of the day, I can do that. And I don't have to take time off from work. So having that flexibility and the ability to have an unlimited potential, no matter, yes, it's a slow start to business. It is, especially being newer to an area. But I have that drive, and I'm not afraid to take those risks. And it was scary. I had a nice savings from selling my home up north, but I needed to go all in. It was ruining my health, affecting my health physically and mentally, trying to go to work every day teaching. So I took that leap. I retired at the end of the school year after getting my license and working part-time. And I went all in after that.
So that was what year?
The end of 2023, or school year 2023.
23. So we're not talking about long ago.
No.
We're talking about
2
2 years
years
ago, pretty soon. And it's true, man. Just having to go back and forth to work every day at a school, and then schools, of course, are notoriously full of germs from these kids. My kids come home. There's not a day that one of my 3 kids isn't sneezing, and they just rotate. So if that's going on with my family, I'm sure it's going on in school and so on. So yeah, being a teacher there could be detrimental to your health, mentally, physically. And there's so many restrictions now and guidelines. And I wonder if we're actually teaching kids anymore, or if we're just following the steps we have to follow.
It was not the same career that I had started back in 2001. And I taught every grade level from K through 6, and I loved it. I loved working in an inner city, working in an affluent suburb, but it just was not the same. The autonomy in the classroom to do what you knew was best wasn't there. And it didn't matter if you're in New York no matter where you are, the federal government overseeing something, you're very limited to what.
You're pushing numbers.
Yes.
That's too bad. I think kindergarten now, one of my kids is in kindergarten now, one in first. And I think kindergarten is the old second grade from years ago. They have pushed him that far.
It has gone up 2 grade levels.
Yeah. Okay, good. That was my impression, but we used to color outside the lines, and it was fine as long as you're coloring. And now it's like, what are you doing? You can't be outside the lines. And not only that, but they're learning to read and write.
And that was where my health background. I know that these kids need to play, especially boys. Everybody wants to put a label. He's ADHD. No, he's a boy.
Yes.
He's a young boy. So my health background, and that was kind of what drove me to get the health coaching certification, knowing that I probably can't make a difference in education, but at least, I can continue to stand up for what was right. Putting these kids behind a computer or an iPad all day, and the testing and kids have enough time to not like school. To have them start off in kindergarten, first and second grade, and not like school, I couldn't do it. And
I've heard that if again, I'm not a teacher, I substitute sometimes, but I've heard that if they don't like kindergarten, it sets them up for the rest of life. They won't like first grade, second grade forever. They just won't like it.
And if that child there's so much focus on pushing the curriculum, you have to, it builds. And if a child isn't mastering A, we can't move on to B, C, and D. And because the government is so involved, that's what's required. Well, today is Tuesday, you need to be on step B, and tomorrow's Wednesday, you need to be on step C. Well, this child is still struggling with step A, and that gap just gets bigger and bigger. And if by 3rd grade that gap is not closed, that child's going to be behind more than likely for the rest of their academic career.
Well, I'm sure I'll talk to you before my next podcast. We're going to have the superintendent of schools on here, and we'll have some questions for him, I'm sure. So make sure I reach out to you. So you moved down here. You're a single mom. Thank God you had some savings. If you didn't, I don't know how you'd make that jump. You'd have to get.
It wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, it would not have happened. And you obviously went to another brokerage first. We won't get into
Two
names.
other brokerages.
Two other brokerages, and this is 2 years ago, folks. And this is what I did too. I went to two others first before landing at Preferred Shore. Now let's talk about why Preferred Shore. What hit you about this brokerage that none others did?
I had done my research upon getting licensed, prior to getting licensed, talking to people who were in real estate as first career, second career, third career, trying to get as much information. I ask a lot of questions, and it probably drives some people crazy, but that's how you learn. You talk to people, you learn what you want to do and what you don't want to do. So everybody had suggested, you're new, you're still working full time, join a team. And I had asked questions, at least the questions I thought I should be asking. You don't know what you don't know. Real estate school doesn't prepare you, just like most careers. It doesn't prepare you until you actually get out and start doing it. So I joined a brokerage, and it was fine. Met some great people. I was on a team. But it was a brokerage where there wasn't a lot of training for newer agents. It was, more of an established kind of hands-off brokerage. Again, great experience. It was on 2 different teams, so I learned a lot, 2 very different teams, 2 different leaders, and then decided I needed more. There was no one reason, I just wanted more. And I went over to another company that was notorious for their training, and I got some great training, had some great speakers come in, was just not happy with the environment. And at that point, I was still on a team. My goal, though, with that education and that educational background, I wanted to either have my own team or I wanted to work with newer agents, kind of paying it forward. There were people who, and it was no different than when I started teaching, there was always somebody there for support. And without those people in both teaching and real estate, I wouldn't be where I am. They took the time, the patience to let me shadow, to answer my questions, to teach me, to provide that constructive feedback, which is what you need as a new agent. So at that time where I was becoming increasingly unhappy where I was, I decided it was time to come off on my own. And Preferred Shore is one of the first companies that I interviewed with when I got licensed. And again, not sure why I didn't join. There was no reason. I just wasn't sure at the time it was a good fit. And
well, maybe you're looking for a team or something.
Yeah.
And let's back up on that for 1 second before we get into how dynamic Preferred Shore is here, because it is. I mean, you can't walk into this building, you can't walk by this building and not think, wow, there's something going on inside there.
I actually had clients that are in from out of state,
Yes.
and they were downtown Sarasota. They took pictures because of the wow of the building.
Yes.
Like, that's my office in the background.
The beautiful artwork on this building. And once you get inside here, it's like, wow, it screams sexy and sell and, life. But team-wise, let's talk about teams, because I was on a team too, and I think there's a lot of push for vision boards and rah, 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 rah. And I think maybe yourself, but particularly for me, I didn't need the rah-rah. I needed leads. I needed information. I needed to learn. I needed to go through the steps. I didn't need to tell me, hey, get up tomorrow morning and do it. I'm up. I'm doing it. What can I do and how can I get a better lead? Did you feel that way? Because you seem a very energetic person too. Did you feel like it was a waste of your time to hear all the rah-rah speeches, or did you need that?
A little bit of both. One of the teams that I was on was predominantly newer agents. The team leader was a former teacher as well, and kind of like me, liked helping others. However, you get to a point then where you're continually surrounded by new agents. You don't have somebody, you want to surround yourself by who you want to be. And I know everybody starts somewhere, but now I needed to surround myself around people who are producing and, the luxury, getting to where I wanted to be. And not everybody, just like in education, not everybody learns the same. Well, what worked for some of the newer agents was not what I was interested in. I was not going to cold call. I was not going to door knock. And that was some of the scripting that we were practicing. And to me, I'm like, I could be doing something much more productive for my business versus sitting here practicing scripts that I'm not going to use. So I don't need the rah-rah. I am very motivated and very self-driven.
Yes, okay, that's
so
what I thought.
I do not need somebody to hold my hand. And part of it is probably because of the age I was at. I was not a 25-year-old new agent. I mean, I had worked for somebody for 30 years.
28, okay. Just get that out there right away.
28.
Yes.
So I was at a different place in my career. Having had different professional experiences, I no longer wanted to work for somebody else.
Right.
I had answered to somebody my entire career. And I'm like, I went in this to make the most for my family. I need to start now. I don't want to answer to people. I don't want to pay a company split on top of a team split. So when you start doing the math, it's like, wow, that's a lot of money that I'm giving away that could be invested back into my business. Which is fine
your first year. You're learning whatever. At some point, once you're rolling, you don't need as much help either.
Absolutely.
So I understand.
I mean, the first couple of transactions, yes, I needed somebody to sit with me while I wrote a contract. I needed to see how to do everything. But again, I learned quickly, and the more you practice it, you don't need that. So I became more and more hands-off as time went on, and other new agents came on, and it was just, I was producing. I really like social media, and that was kind of where I was focusing, and in terms of building relationships, just being out face-to-face with people. So I liked the thought of kind of going off on my own. And one of the things that drew me to Preferred Shore was that I was missing everywhere else was the marketing, everything that this company has to offer. And I was always worried, maybe I'm not going to fit in, maybe. And I had come back, and Olga was wonderful, keeping in touch with me. Always the
and
first
Keith,
to.
Did you talk to Keith at all?
I had never met Keith until I came here, and he started trying to make me look good on my videos.
He does a good job of that, doesn't he?
He does. But Olga had actually reached out one day and just to see how I was. And the timing could not have been better. I'm like, you know what? Can we meet?
Yeah.
And after talking to her, she had invited me to a team meeting at Preferred Shore, and it was actually held at RASM. And I went, I knew a few people just from the industry, but I've always been the person who sits in the back, and I like to casually observe. I was like that in college. That's just me. And there were a few things that struck me at that meeting. One of them was the fact that she graciously invited me to come to see if it was a good fit. You don't know until you're really immersed into something. Yep. And that was right after all of the changes started taking place with the NAR lawsuit. So we were now required to do the buyer-broker agreement and the compensation agreements. And there were two things that stood out, and I had actually told Robert this. There were probably 150 agents at that meeting, and I know we're a very large company, but as Robert went around, he knew everybody's name. And those are little things to me, and again, probably because of where I am in my career, that really means something.
It does. Me too. When I've met one person at school, and I said, "Hi, nice to meet you. What do you do?" And my name's Kendall Lutz. The next day, she says, "Hi, Kendall." It blows my mind. And Robert's the same way. He knows your name, and Robert Milligan. It's amazing when someone remembers your name, how impactful that is. And I wish I could do that.
Exactly. The older I get, the worse I get with names. And I was telling you when we met, like, if you have a dog, I'll know your dog's name. I probably won't remember your name. But just knowing, and again, there's over 400 of us. And the fact that he, and we don't have office required time. So we're not always in here. But the fact that he went around and he knew everybody's name, that was very telling. And then the other thing that really resonated with me is, after all of these changes took place, he started the meeting. He has an agenda, and he had started the meeting by asking how everybody was feeling about all of these changes. And I think it was, how many of you are completely confident? We looked around the room, and
nobody.
I don't think anybody raised their hand.
Nobody was completely confident.
And some of these, and that was the other thing I like, it's an, I don't want to say an older group, but a more experienced group, more professional. So I'm like, wow. Some of these people have been doing this for years and years and years, and they're not raising their hand. Like, it kind of hit me like, I don't have to have all the answers right now. Right. Whereas I'm my worst critic, and I'm hard on myself, and I expect I have to know everything. So looking around this room, nobody's confident in what they're doing at this point. And Robert took the time to answer every single question that an agent asked about these changes and how it affected us and what was going to happen going forward. Whereas another company that I was with, it was, this is not the time for this. You can do this at another time. And he was able, even answering our questions and getting off agenda, he was able to keep that meeting on schedule. Every single person, though, walked out of that room feeling a little bit more confident. So just those little things really stood out to me that, wow, this is a company that I can align myself with.
Right.
And after that, my decision was made.
And now you've never looked back. It's been a year now?
Almost a year. It will be a year this summer. And no, I could not be happier. I get calls from different, recruiters. Nope. I'm not going anywhere.
Now you've taken off. I'd say I don't know your numbers, and we don't need to discuss those. But are you at the point where and everybody's comfort level is different, but are you at the point where you're rolling along, you feel comfortable with what you're doing, you're selling enough homes to keep the roof over your house, or are you still struggling to make that end meet? Or thirdly, what's your desire to be, like the $1 million real estate agent? I mean, what do you want to be with this?
It's...
Because you've been at this for a year now.
Yes.
And we'll talk about how you got there in just a minute. But what level do you think you're at? You're beyond the beginning phase. Are you now chugging along fairly good, but you're still working hard at it?
So when we had sat down to have coffee that day, I had told you the first full year I had set 2 goals for myself. My goal was to sell, and I'm realistic about my goals. I wanted to sell an average of a home a month.
I'm not, by the way. I should be driving the Mercedes, and I'm not. I still get the minivan, so I'm not.
I wanted to sell about a home a month on average, and I wanted to surpass my teaching salary. My teaching salary in New York, my teaching salary in Florida.
So a home a month down here, depending on what you're selling, that could certainly do that. But no, I think that's a realistic goal. That kind of my goal too, is to sell a home a month. And I thought, boy, if I'm really good, a home a week would be really ideal. But I'd be super busy, and I think now the quality of life, the return on that is not where I want to be.
And I don't want to say I'm never satisfied. Am I doing well? Yes. Am I keeping a roof over my head? Yes. Am I where I want to be? No. So I did reach those 2 goals. And for some, that's production in a half year. For me, in my first full year in one of the toughest markets in 30 years,
Yes.
changing companies,
And
zero help,
sphere of influence here,
zero
nothing.
sphere of influence. And I'm personable, so you meet people, but everybody's a realtor.
Oh my gosh, there are so many of them. Yeah, you don't pass somebody without being a realtor.
And you see, it's hard, and I'm guilty of it. It's hard not to compare yourself to people on social media.
Right.
And I have to remind myself, people only put out what they want to see. There are a lot of things in real estate behind the scenes, the contracts that fall apart, the tears when you get off the phone. Like, it's not easy. And people have said if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. Sales is a different ballgame in itself.
That's my other question. I look at real estate and, which is probably why I'm not selling one a week, but I don't look at it like a sales job. I look at it like more of a service job, and the sales should come along with that service. And that's why I told my team way back when, I'd rather be the best at what I'm doing than sell 1 million homes and be terrible at it.
Yes. I was always taught, treat others the way you want to be treated. I am not a salesperson, and I don't want to be bothered by a salesperson. Right. When I go into a store or a car dealer, whatever it is, I want you to acknowledge me because that's important. But I want you to kind of leave me alone until I'm ready. Be there if I have a question, but don't push me. That's how I in turn act with clients. And people have said, thank you, you're not a pushy salesperson. Right. It's about building relationships. And yes, it's a service. I work with a lot of clients from out of state, and part of the joy I get is because I get to teach them. And I'm not teaching children anymore. I'm teaching about our area and the differences, because it is different depending on where you're coming from. So that I enjoy. I get to teach.
You have more buyers than sellers right now?
Right now, it's about half and half. Okay. I started as a buyer's agent. That was kind of my role on the team. And I think that's how most people start. Unless you know somebody, you're not getting a listing right off the bat, because who are you compared to everybody else? Right. So started as a buyer's agent, ended up with a couple of listings my first full year. And now I have 4 active, 2 coming. So the listings are coming in, and I wanted to transition I like to do both. I do.
Did you have any problems getting paid as a buyer's agent? Getting paid by the other real estate agent?
No. Fortunately, not much has changed.
Or I should say about the seller.
No. So far, not much has changed.
Good.
There have been a few where buyers didn't want to look at the home because the seller wasn't offering. They didn't want to pay. But for most of it's business as usual.
Right. Okay. So here you are, you're chugging along. What is your ultimate goal? It sounds like you can have that quality of life battle too. Again, you could probably sell more and do more, but you've got kids, you got your time.
And health. I don't have a significant other that lives here, and I am a single parent. And I am at that point now where I am so busy that I need to set those boundaries.
She almost didn't make the podcast. How many lists? How many?
We had four showings.
4 showings this morning before the podcast.
Yes.
Wow.
Dropped my daughter off at school and then
gotta go. Head
right over. It's a lot. It takes a lot of organization, a lot of planning, and one thing that when I meet with Mike Barbino weekly, the one thing that I said, I'm like, I need to work on my boundaries, because you want to try to help everybody. And he even said the other day, he's like, you can't help everybody. So I'm starting now to get to that point where my quality of life and my business we're kind of head to head. So yes, could I sell a lot more if I had somebody to help me and take care of my kids and share the housework? Absolutely. But when I have my HOA going to be knocking on my door because my lawn needs to be mowed, it's not easy. But I realize I also don't want to work 24/7.
Right.
That's not life to me anymore.
So let's talk about, you have a weekly meeting with Mike?
I do.
Barbino?
I do.
Okay. That's something else for new agents, to tap into that. And he's giving you some good information?
Yes. So I'm on the Platinum Partnership, which has been just incredible. When you sit down and look at all of the things that
we get
out of this. Yep. One of the things that is offered is a weekly coaching session. And I had decided that come the first of the year, I wanted it to be an accountability. If I tell somebody my word is my word. So if I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. I may not always, it's like, well, so if I tell him I'm going to do this, or he says, what's your goal? So it helps keep me on track. And now I know if I don't do something, I have to answer to him on Wednesday morning. So it
So you meet with him every Wednesday for what, like an hour? How long is that?
45 minutes to an hour. It just depends. But it kind of helps me go over the last week, what went well, what didn't, what can I change, where are we going this week? What's on your plate? But it's not just business. It's you need to take some time for yourself. You need to do some personal things. So it's I'm so thankful to have that opportunity.
And what was the first thing you told him when you sat down the first time? What did you say? Help? What do I do? What's next? I mean, what was the lead-in?
I think it was, and when we had met when I first came on, and one of the things, you meet with him, you meet with the marketing team, you meet with Jade to do the onboarding, so you get to meet with everybody. And I said, once I get settled and setting up your database and everything, and it was, also the end of the year, I'm like, once the new year rolls around, I want to start meeting with you as an accountability. And that's what I said to him. I said, I need to be accountable. Running your own business, you don't have to be accountable to anybody.
No, just have to pay the bills.
Yes.
That's your accountability. Well, so what did he make you do it first? What did you want to do first? Would he help you do first? So if you're a new agent coming in here and you go down that process, and I think, again, we both agree that Preferred Shore is the place to be, and with all the help they have here, and Mike and Olga and Keith and all these great people, Milligan, what did he launch? What happened?
I don't remember.
What should I expect if I'm a new agent coming in here talking to Mike?
It's really an individualized, what do you want out of it? Why are you sitting down with me? And, nobody wants to waste their time. So if you sit down, you're going to be expected to put in the work. And I think it was more of, I want to get to here. I think we went over my goals from last year and my production. It's like, all right, I want to get to here now. And it's okay. Well, what are you going to do to, have you thought about it? What does it look like? He's not telling me what to do. It's what are you comfortable doing? What's working for you? How are you getting your business? Have you mapped it out? Have you written it down? So it was very individualized to what I was looking to do.
Okay. He didn't send you door knocking or
nope.
cold calling. Yeah. No, that's very interesting. And I think at some of the other brokerage we've gone to, both of us have gone to, and we just didn't get that. It was a lot of you can do this rah language without a lot of substance behind it, and we don't need that. So you're rolling along now. You're into your first year. Where do you see yourself down the road? Are you more luxury market? Are you middle? Or at this point?
When I look at who, and different workshops and things that trainings I've gone to, it's, they always say, who's your ideal client? I am almost 50 years old. I have 2 teenagers. I'm naturally attracting people who are in my age group with kids around my age who are looking to relocate. So I have a lot of out-of-state clients. I can speak to the schools because I taught here. I've spent 20 years in education. So that's a value. I want to add value. I'm not looking to get a sale. I'm, hey, let me tell you about the schools. Let me tell you about the different communities. Let me tell you how it's different than New York. So a lot of my clientele right now are middle-aged families with children looking to better their lives. Do I see myself in a luxury market? I'd like to, but that's naturally who I'm drawing. I also like the underdog. The first-time home buyer, the VA buyer, right. The FHA buyer, the person who's on a very tight budget. And that, I think, comes with my background of education. Has it burned me in this career? Absolutely. Have I spun my wheels to have nothing at the end of the day? Absolutely. But I've also had some remarkable experiences helping people get the keys to their house for the first time at 65 and 75 years old.
Wow.
So to me, I may not have made a lot on that, but the feeling that I have of helping somebody is sometimes...
The journey is so much more precious than the actual money in the bank sometimes. So as you're going down this path, and I think it's tough. If I'm a Lakewood Ranch guy, that's where I live, and that's where my community's out in that area. And that's a whole different market than downtown here, which when I first came down here as a real estate agent, I said, I love downtown. I love being down here. Oh my gosh, I would love to sell these condos. I would love to sell stuff on the beach. But if it's not your market, there's a lot of people who are trained really well to do that here in Preferred Shore. And I've kind of backed off that a little bit and said, let me focus on my neighborhood because I know the most about that.
Yeah.
And the schools and the people over there. And I'd like to help those families with kids in elementary school, middle school, maybe by their first home, maybe their second, maybe they're relocating, maybe they're selling. They have to move back someplace. It's kind of my market niche out there, and I want to stick with that. So yeah, it's nice to come down here and just go, wow, glamour. Why not sell a $1 million condo? But there are folks who've been doing that for a long time and do it really well. So I'm fine to give that up for now. But as you said, as you age, we could be talking to folks in 10 years that want a condo down here. And now we're selling condos. And hopefully to get the condo HOAs all fixed by that time.
I have, in addition to the families, another large portion of my business has been retirees, from New York coming down, second home, 55 and over community. I have the SRES designation, so I'm certified to work in the senior community. And we don't want to think of that as senior necessarily because we're right on that cost. So that's been so I like to have a wide variety. And again, education is important. I have the waterfront designation, so waterfront properties, the buyer's designation. So those are things that are important to me to have. But I guess you kind of attract naturally where you are in your life. And that's where I am. Right.
And that's good. That's a good market and so on. So let's talk about trends in real estate now a little bit. Oftentimes, real estate friends are talking about, the state of Florida is down, the country's down, even Sarasota as a whole is down, the prices are dropping, days on market are longer, blah, blah, blah. But it seems to me, unless you know a specific zip code, and sometimes even drive micro into that market, it could be like my market, zip code 34240, which is Lakewood Ranch, is not down at all. It's up like 5% over a year ago in pricing. So how do you balance that as you sell and show homes? I mean, there's a lot of different areas here, and some are going for cheaper than last year, more than last year, faster. You really have to know your neighborhoods.
Yes, and you're right. It does vary by zip code, by county. I mean, even Sarasota and Manatee County are very different in terms of their days on market, their inventory. So one thing I tell buyers it used to be, well, if you see a home on market for an extended period of time, the first question is, what's wrong with it? Why is it sitting? So educate buyers. Well, I like to have that conversation up front. This is the average days on market. So if you see a home that's been sitting 120 days, doesn't mean anything's wrong with it. Same thing with sellers. I go in with the sellers and let them know, yes, I know you need to sell right now, but this is your average days on market. So could it happen sooner? Yes, but I want to set that expectation. We're not in the same market we were a couple years ago. You're not necessarily getting 20 offers on a house $100,000 above asking price. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think our market, it really reaped the advantages of so many people coming down during the pandemic. And I think that we're returning. And I tell people ask all the time, are we crashing? Are we crashing? Should I not buy in Florida? Should I rent for a little while because I don't want to buy? And that's an individualized. I'll never tell somebody, well, you have to buy because you're just wasting money if you rent. That's not me, because that's not for everybody.
Right.
But a lot of people have asked, especially coming from out of state, are we going to have are we crashing in Florida? No, we're not crashing. And as Robert had said at the sales meeting, Florida's the first to go in, Florida's the first to come out. Is our market changing? Yes, absolutely. Is our market slower than in other parts of the country? Yes. I mean, there was a home in my hometown that had 100 and some showings over a weekend and had multiple offers. That's not what we're experiencing here. We also have a lot of new construction, so there comes, and it's hard for some of the resales to compete with that. So you definitely have to be prepared to have those conversations with your buyers and your sellers and set those expectations up front. And I think if everybody's aware of that, it makes for a much easier experience. Buyers, it's a great time now. They have a lot more leverage in terms of negotiation, getting concessions, finding out what the motivation is of the seller. Do they have to sell? Do they have to go back to the office? Do they have to relocate? Okay, well, now let's use that to our advantage. Sellers, especially if they bought high a few years ago, which I'm seeing, for whatever reason, they're selling now, it might not be as pleasant of an experience.
Well, yeah, and of course, if they bought 4 years ago, I mean, and the house was $400,000, now it's $800,000, and they have to sell it for $700,000 or $750,000. Okay, you can swallow that. But if you bought that home for $800,000 at the very tail end of that, yeah, it might be a little bit of an eye opener right now. But I think this is like the stock market. You ride the long term here. This is not a 1 month, 1 year type of an event. You're going to have some ups and downs. I was looking at medium listing prices as of January of 25 in my zip code 34240, and the median is 890, almost 900,000, and that reflects, they said, almost a 2% increase compared to the previous year. Now, probably outside of that zip code, which is just Lakewood Ranch, we're talking about Lorraine Avenue, Fruitville, new construction out there as well. Outside of that zip code, I bet you're going to see a drop. The broader Sarasota area, they're talking about a 4.8% drop, with the average home selling for around $550,000. Again, at this time and so on. So it all depends on, like, where you're going. And we talked about county to county, but even, gosh, you have to just drill down to the zip code within. And even in that same zip code, I have multi-million-dollar homes not too far away from me in the same zip code, and there's no way my home is going for anywhere near that. So it's a broad spectrum even within a zip code that you have to navigate. And like I said, the new construction is probably driving a lot of these home prices up, and they have better interest rates they can offer. So that might be the way to go now.
And a lot of people, I have a few that I've been working with in new construction, and they like the interest rates that are lower. Because we're still at a high interest rate, and yes, it's not as high as it was however many years ago, but for what people remember, people always remember the most recent. So people remember the 2.5%, the 3%. Mine was 2.5% when I sold my home. Yeah. It's hard. It's hard. It's a big adjustment. You are able to afford less house with the same amount of money. But the appeal of the new construction, you have those lower interest rates. You can do it all as a bundle. You can finance through the builder. You can get your insurance through the builder. You have a 1-year home warranty. Everything is built up to hurricane code. So there is a lot of appeal when it comes to new construction. But, a lot of people, we were looking at some up in Hillsborough County, and we looked at some older homes, and by older, I mean 2000 teens, and some newer homes, 2020, 21, 22. And you notice, and my client had said, she's like, it's different. What do you mean? And I noticed it, but I'm like, what do you mean different? The appeal, the allure of the home is just different. You go from character to no character now. Right. So, the homes have changed. But there's, as my inspector said, there's a buyer for everything. It's just finding a buyer. I have
a couple of interior designers we've talked to in the podcast before, and they both talked about their main goal now is putting up feature walls or adding architecture inside the home or style, because they built so many of these homes now, just very modular. And here you go. But for $1 million, you're done. And then you have to put another couple $100,000 to make it unique and feel like your own. But speaking of that, let's go back to, okay, you get a listing. What's the first thing you look at when you walk into a home and you say, that's not going to work, or I need to change that or change that? Talk to me about maybe the top 3 things you see in a new home, a new listing that you're about to list, that you say we need to change or fix.
You have to tread lightly because people love their stuff. People love, and if you have a home where people are still occupying it and they have kids, and those are some of the experiences I'm dealing with, it's much different than somebody who's, okay, I'm back home, I need you to sell my house now. You have a vacant listing. So I always tell people, remove personal photos. Somebody comes in, they want to feel that the house could be theirs, not see your family photos, nor do you want strangers looking at your family photos. Right. From a safety perspective, as well as, let the buyers get into their mindset. And it's just a matter of, these are the things that I would recommend. Are you okay with that? And are you okay taking the playpen down? Are you okay kind of decluttering? And I give them the photo checklist of, these are the things that, we need to do. And, for the photos at least, and then you can kind of go back to living. But you want it to be, I always tell people, want it to be show ready, but I don't want to stress you out in the meantime. I don't want you to be walking on eggshells for the next 6 weeks because your house is on the market. So we try to get it to a place where it's clean, it's decluttered, and buyers can see themselves walking through there and kind of visualize making it their own.
And that's kind of the basics of any showing. But do you ever show folks a value against that? Like if you repaint that wall. You get this orange wall when you walk in, one wall, just repaint that wall, and this home's going to sell so much faster. I mean, we don't know that for sure, but that's just the logic behind it. You ever put like a value behind that? Like, you've got to do a couple of things here.
So somewhat, a lot of the homes that, fortunately, that I've had have been either completely remodeled.
That's good.
So we were dealing with very simple neutral, and the sellers knew once they remodeled that they were going to sell, so they chose something neutral. I've had homes that were vacant, so we've done virtual staging, and if that had not worked, we would have brought in regular staging. It just depends on the situation. I had a seller who asked, should I put in a pool? It's like, well, it's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath home. A lot of buyers, you're not getting a family in a 2-2.
Right.
So you think about who your buyer is going to be. More than likely somebody who's downsizing, probably somebody up there in age. Do they necessarily want to deal with the pool? Right. So a pool, no, something like that. But can you paint and clean and steam clean the carpets? The listing appointment I went to yesterday, they're like, we're going to clean the grout. We're going to steam clean the carpets. Perfect. Just the little things, cleaning the ducts, cleaning the air conditioning. I try to put my mind in the terms of a buyer and share with the seller, well, these are the things that buyers are looking for. They don't really care about the paint, have your ducts been clean? So things that you can do without breaking the bank. But yeah, if you have an orange wall, now when I sold my house in New York, I had an orange wall. I had a playroom. I didn't paint it. I'm like, They told me you should, I'm like, no, it wasn't a deal breaker.
Yeah.
So paint is something that can be fixed. Buyers are looking at those big things right now, especially in Florida, the age of the roof, the age of the water tank, the age of
AC.
the HVAC,
yeah.
Those things make a difference. So some sellers will decide, it's like, okay, I'll replace that. I had a buyer under contract. We negotiated a new hot water tank. She didn't care about the paint color. She didn't care about the things that were, loose in the kitchen. That was a big concern to her. So
yeah,
it definitely,
big ticket items.
Yes. So as a seller, you want it to be show ready, but those are the things that the buyers are concerned about now, especially in this market, versus the paint color.
Right. And I don't mean that paint colors, that's a cheap fix.
It is.
But I would think if I walked in and saw this orange wall, I'd say, do me a favor, just paint it white. Help us both out. Help me help you.
Absolutely.
Sell your home. What was that from that one movie, Help Me Help You?
I'm the wrong person asking about movies.
Yeah, and I what about roofing down here now in Florida? What about the big changes that are supposed to happen on that? Have you heard about that?
So
is that true?
I'm not sure.
Shingles on the way out?
Oh, I didn't hear that.
I heard that. I don't know if that's true or not. Do they want all homes, all the new insurance companies want tile roofing? And grandfathered in, so over a 10-year period of time or something, which would make a lot of sense, but would mean if you really want to make some money now, you get into the roofing business.
I will say, coming from, and everybody's experience is different, but coming from New York, where a lifetime roof was a lifetime roof. In the home I lived in, I never had to touch my roof, and it was probably one of the originals. That's a big change.
What's a shingle roof up north, though, right? Mm-hmm. And they lasted 30 years, you think?
Oh, 30, 40, 50 years. Absolutely. Even with the snow, it was truly a lifetime roof.
Yeah.
So that's something I tell people, again, depending on where they're coming from, just so you know, once your roof is over 10 years old, and there's a reason, it's because of the heat, the sun.
Right.
Now the
wind.
The wind. And so I'm like, there is a reason, but yeah, after 10 years, your roof is kind of, the insurance companies are apprehensive to insure you. And after the beginning of 2024, the secondary water resistance that goes down underneath when they lay the roof. So a lot of changes, a lot of things that are different depending where you're coming from. So if you see a home that the seller just put on a new roof, it's great. That's golden, because that's going to save you a huge expense down the line.
Right. Especially in the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think all the main events, like you said, the HVAC, the water heater, the roof, maybe they've had a pool checked recently or something. But okay, so let's talk about your marketing, how you got to this point, because it's different. Like you said, you're not door knocking, you're not cold calling. What avenue did you go down, and why is that working for you?
When I first started, again, reading, listening to podcasts, watching videos of people who've been in the industry, everybody said, have 2 or 3 things that work for you. Well, and I was guilty. I tried to do a little bit of everything. And it was to the point, like, I'm doing a little bit of everything, but I'm not focusing enough on one thing. So it just kind of what felt natural. I did open houses the first year I was licensed pretty much every weekend when I could. My daughter was playing travel sports, so I was, it was here or there. I couldn't do it. But I did open houses. Not only, yes, you do them to get clients. You're probably not selling that house, but it was a good experience. You learn how to do them. I had a great team leader who taught us how to do open houses. We role played it. Now I'm like, oh, I really don't want to do open houses.
Plus, you get to see a lot of different homes too.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that was what I did when I first got licensed, the open houses. And what naturally came to me was social media. I mean, we're in a digital age, and in the same experience, I tried to do too much social media. I was trying to do TikTok. That's just not my generation. So I took some classes on social media, and one was very fascinating. It was actually talking about how the different generations use social media and what they look for and what platforms. And again, I'm Facebook and Instagram. That's where I feel comfortable. Yes, I have LinkedIn. I shut down my TikTok. I don't feel that I need to, and will it cost me a listing or a bot? Maybe, but I don't feel comfortable being on those platforms. So
isn't Facebook still like the number one?
Mm-hmm. Especially for Gen X, which is what I am. Facebook is where people go. So one of the new platforms that I've been trying to build up is YouTube. And I because I've talked to a lot of people. Where did you learn about Florida? Where did you learn about Sarasota? Oh, YouTube. I don't use YouTube personally. So for me, it was very eye-opening. Like, oh, you saw all of that information on YouTube.
Yeah.
So by talking to people, I'm like, well, maybe this is somewhere where I need to invest some time and energy. But social media has been a big success for me, not just with marketing, but with the Facebook groups and just building those relationships over time, whether it was starting to talk about a school or talking about, hey, you moved from Buffalo, can you share your experiences? And those relationships turn into clients down the line.
So you started talking more on social media. You did, you had a podcast before this one. You filmed yourself in different events and so on, and just keep doing that. This is your advice to new agents out there. If you're not going to door knock, you're not going to cold call, which I have a problem with as well. I don't mind door knocking. I love talking to people. I feel like I'm bugging them. But on social media, they can turn you on and turn you off, and they can. But how do you get a handle on that to make it work for you? There has to be some niche or some aha moment that you said, this is working in social media.
I think it was just, again, and there are days it's like, wow, I did all of this social media. I mean, it's like, wow, am I working? I'm on my phone all day, or some days it feels like you're not working, but you are. When you really hone in on, I'm talking to people, I'm building relationships, I'm adding value. And that's the big thing, add value. Don't try to sell them a house, don't try to sell them a rental, add value. And I'll tell people, if they ask about experiences, what did you do? Well, I rented when I first came down. Yeah, and I tell people, I sell real estate, but maybe you should rent. If you are back and forth between 8 different areas, maybe you should rent for a little bit.
And I'll see you in 1 year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
let's have coffee in the meantime.
Exactly. I'm here to help you. But I think what really got me or kept me going was the fact that I started to see the results. Slowly, you started to get people, hey, I saw your video. People you don't know, you started to get those followers. After I had posted my end of the year kind of summary that most people do, I had people reach out to me who I didn't know. Thank you for your inspiration. Thank you for sharing your story. I'm a single mom. I wanted to take my real estate exam. So seeing those things, like, wow, I am getting out there. That to me is what keeps me going.
That is good. And that's why I wanted you on the show, because I wanted to talk to a single mom. I wanted to talk to somebody who's struggling. I mean, oftentimes the real estate agents have either a ton of cash behind them, or they have a husband who's working, and it's a second income, and they can do this and make it or not, make it or break it. It's okay. But for you had to do it. There's no turning back. And a lot of folks understand. They see, the Beverly Hills real estate agents and so on making millions of dollars.
I'm not selling sunshine.
Yeah, we're not selling. Yeah, and they think, oh, I could do that. Well, yeah, if you're pretty, you're blonde. Okay, there you go. It's not that easy.
It's not.
It is, how many agents actually make it? And about 90% of them, I think it was 85%, never even sell a home. Another 5% probably sell 1 or 2 or 3 or a handful. So the last 10% are really making it. But then let's talk about making it. Are you making $50,000 a year? And maybe that's good because you were making 30. Or are you making 6 figures or more? Is that where you want to be? And that's very few and far between. So it's a tough job, but if you work hard at it and you want it, it's like anything else. But how many percentages of businesses fail out there? 30% fail anyway. So it is something that if you want to get into and really dig into it and go for it.
One of the things that I will say I asked a lot when I first got licensed, a couple years ago, was how long did it take you? How long did it take you to really, and the way I asked it was, how long did it take you until you felt like you had 2 feet on the ground? And most people, and again, that was when I got licensed, it was a time where if you were breathing, you could probably sell something, because real estate down here was it was different. But most people, if they were honest, and I always tell people, I'm going to tell you the good, bad, and the ugly. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's 2 years. And those days where I wanted to quit, those days where I would go on LinkedIn and I'm going to go back to a W-2 job. And then 2 years. So like that little voice in my head just kept telling me, just keep going, just keep going. You have come so far. You are doing, and I have a friend who moved down as well. We didn't know each other till we moved down. It was like, you did what people dream of doing. You upped and left. You moved to Florida and you changed careers and you quit your job. There was a lot of change. But any time where I would get down on myself and feel like I'm working and I'm just spinning my wheels, I have nothing to show for it at the end of the day. Because you don't know if you're getting paid on Friday.
Nope.
It's not like that. It could be months until your next paycheck.
And it took you 2 years full time
to really feel like I had.
You found a career that's taking off.
Yes. Am I where I want to be? Absolutely not. But that 2 years kept me going, because there were many days where I'm like, I'm just going to look for a paid job, and I'll never make enough money, but I don't have to worry about it. It's a different mindset to go from a W-2 to now running your own business. Everything is different. But just knowing what people had said, like the 2 years.
And you could be at the point another year where you have a team. We have people working with you and so on, and you've expanded this. So it does take a lot. If you're driven to do it, it can happen. Preferred Shore is probably one of the best places to be right now. Brokerage to be at. This is an amazing place, and there's lots of guidance, like you said here. I think we both found that. We stumbled into it. I also kind of came here, and then my team left here, and I thought, oh my gosh, I loved it here, but my team went someplace else, so I had to go with them. But came back without my team because I said I want to be here. So it's a wonderful place. But if you're full time into this, takes 2 years. If you're doing this part time or on the side, it's going to take a hell of a lot longer.
It is.
So
it's very.
You've got to be dedicated and jump in. If you're going to redo this real quick from the beginning again, if you're going to start all over again, what would you do different? You go to Preferred Shore first.
Looking back now, I absolutely would have, but I'm also the type where I try to take every experience and look at it for the good.
It's a journey, that's right.
Would I have done anything any differently? Probably not. Because I ended up here. And I ended up here at a time where I knew that I would be good. 2 years ago, I wouldn't have had the same confidence. Am I good enough? So the journey brought me here. I'm not going anywhere. So I probably wouldn't do anything differently. And I can say that for pretty much most of my life. I really would not have done things differently.
Wow. That's good. Good to hear. No, like I said, you inspired me when I met with you, and I read up about where you came from, and we talked about that, and I saw some of the homes you were selling and listings you had and so on. I said, I'm going to talk to her, because this is the real life real estate agent.
This is real life.
Yes. I mean, and a lot of them have maybe a husband that helps, so they're not as pressured as you are. You are maybe even one of you may be the 1%, because of the 10% doing well, usually have a husband or a mate or somebody who's helping them on with another income. You're unique, and that this is it.
It is, and it's not glamorous.
No, it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, but at the end of the day, I know that I have that potential.
Yep.
And things just kind of build on.
And you get that high selling and making somebody happy. They just sold their house, or they just bought their home, and you get a friend for life now.
The highs are high, the lows are low. And fortunately, I can say that most of my clients, I can call them friends.
Yeah.
Go out for dinner, go out for a drink.
And that's how it should be.
Talk and not real estate. Like, how's your family? So that makes me feel good.
Yeah.
Knowing that I have now lifelong friends.
Nice. Well, good job. And again, if this is Celine Charleson, if you have to have a female real estate agent, there you go. That's her name. And the number is, can I give me your number?
Absolutely.
Here? 716-783-4667. Celine Charleson. If you don't want a female and you're stuck on a male, I'm your guy. It's Kendall Lutz, and you know my number, 847-980-8987. But either way, Preferred Shore is a place to list your home, buy your home through them. With some great agents here, and Celine and I would be happy to help you either way. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. It was nice to talk to you.
It was nice to talk to you too and learn more about you.
Hopefully
and good luck.
Inspire some people.
Yes, and good luck.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Coffee and Chatter and Conversations with Kendall.